What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another video, another audiobook review. This time, obviously, I'm talking about Thrawn, Treason, which is written again by Timothy Zahn, narrated by Mark Thompson. It's another Star Wars audiobook. I finished the Thrawn trilogy. As I said in my previous video, my previous book review, when I talked about the second entry in the trilogy, I'm going to go back and reread the first one, and I'll do a video on that eventually. But I was just, in the middle of the second one, so I finished it, and then onto the third one. And yeah, I read the third one in I listened to the third one in like 5 days or something. I kind of blew through it. I finished it a couple days ago at this point, but yeah, I finished that. I really loved it. It again was a fantastic kind of like mystery sort of thing, but it's just the focus is put back on Thrawn. You don't have Vader and Anakin in this book, and so it's just taking place in one time period. So the basic plot of this one is that Thrawn wants some of the military funding for his TIE Defender project. Meanwhile, you have Krennic, who is in charge of course, Stardust, which is the construction of the Death Star, who wants the funding to go to Stardust. And so basically, Tarkin ends up orchestrating this bet where Thrawn has a week to help solve this Grolic problem that is holding up the production and some of the shipping lines for Stardust and those materials. And so it's basically, if Thrawn can achieve this, then he'll get a lot more of his funding for the TIE Defender project. And then in this also, Director Krennic sends a assistant director who is Ronan to go watch over and see and report on what Thrawn is doing throughout this. It's not a quest really, but throughout this challenge mission, whatever you would like to call it. And so that's generally the basic premise. And so you have Thrawn then going to investigate this, and it turns into this whole conspiracy that involves treason. You get the Chiss ascendancy involved some too. Eli Vanto from the first book, which I'll talk about him a lot more whenever I talk about that book. Eli Vanto comes back. He was Thrawn's protege basically in the first book. It's really great seeing that character return. And so yeah, there's just a lot of really good elements. This book does again what I was talking about with the previous book, where there's a wide cast of side characters and supporting characters that all are very fleshed out. They bring a lot to the story, and they, along with Thrawn and how they interact with Thrawn and just kind of the overall plot, really keep things fresh. They keep the pace very nice, and it's a good it's just a good balancing act that Timothy Zahn is able to do with creating these compelling characters that also work to serve the overall narrative goal. And so it's really cool. Captain Pharaoh, Commodore Pharaoh, was a standout. She's great in this. But then really the thing that I love, I think, the most about these books is seeing Thrawn's just absolute tactical genius. Like the naval battles that he gets into, the space battles that he gets into, and just the amount of steps ahead that he's constantly thinking, the way that he thinks. And Timothy Zahn does a really good job of putting the reader kind of in the position of figuring out how Thrawn thinks and kind of teaching you to think in a similar way to try to get those certain amount of steps ahead, because he has characters around Thrawn that are doing that. And so whenever you're from their perspective, you really are, your mind starts working, you start trying to put these pieces together, and you're like, okay, well, how would Thrawn think about that? What other ways can I think about this situation? And that's a really cool thing to do and a cool thing to experience as a reader, listener, what have you. And I really love that element of these books. And then again, like I said, Thrawn is just an all-time character. He's fantastic. The more that we see and learn about him, and then also the involvement of the Chiss ascendancy, is super, super cool. I think that the Chiss are definitely, I can't wait to read more about them in the prequel trilogy of his books, but the Chiss are definitely probably one of the more compelling aspects of the Star Wars universe to me now. And then also the Grisk. The threat of the Grisk is insane, and they are definitely given a highlight in this book and explored more. And it's just really crazy to think about the fact that they haven't, how little they're mentioned in other media, but also how big of an impact they can have and the threat that they really pose. And it's also very interesting seeing the way that Thrawn talks about them now, and then knowing how the Empire is going to go, because we obviously know about the downfall of the Empire. And so seeing those puzzle pieces put in place and then knowing how some of them are going to fall is really interesting to think about. And then also, this book does a really good job. This is a totally different tangent, but it's insane how expertly placed this plot is in connection to the rest of the things that are happening in the galaxy at the time. Like, they mentioned, obviously, Stardust, the construction of the Death Star is a huge point. It has a huge impact on this book. and we get Krennic, we get a new character, Ronan, but like it's still talking about all this stuff that was, you know, of course, introduced in, or a lot of it introduced in Rogue One. And the construction of the Death Star is one of the things that's been expanded upon in other media during these years and kind of like alluded to. And we know that some funds were being made for that. And it's just really cool to see that explored. And then also the TIE Defender project for Thrawn, which is very integral to the plot of Rebels, and them mentioning Lothal specifically, mentioning the young Jedi Ezra Bridger and Kanan Jarrus and the Rebels crew, and the way that it's all put together well, the way just it fits so neatly in the timeline, and it connects itself so well to other Star Wars media. Like you have connections to Rogue One, you have connections to Rebels, you have all these other things that are really, really cool. And I love seeing that. This book does a great job of doing that. And yeah, I mean, just overall, it's another very, very strong plot. It's a very fun, it's a very great Star Wars story. Thrawn, again, is just an all-time character. He's my second favorite character now in Star Wars. And yeah, he's amazing. This book is fantastic. Highly, highly recommend this one. The whole trilogy, really. It's been great. I don't know. I think either this one or the first one was probably my favorite. Maybe the first one. And that'll probably be reaffirmed whenever I reread it, because then I'll have read it more than the other two. But anyways, I'll talk about that more whenever I get into that video. So yeah, I think those are basically my thoughts. Production quality, it's always fantastic with the Star Wars audiobooks. So many great sound effects. Voice acting by Mark Thompson is fantastic. His Thrawn voice is so, so good. The way that Thrawn says perhaps is the best thing ever. Yeah, those are, I guess, my overall thoughts on Thrawn Treason, the final installment in his first canon trilogy for Star Wars. So yeah, have you read the Thrawn books? What did you think about them? Please be sure to let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, please also be sure to leave a like down below. I really appreciate it and it really helps me out. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and turning that notification bell on. I also really appreciate that and it helps me out a lot. And as always, you can find me on Twitter at APBatman with 2 T's, and then also my Batman Twitter. It's at Batman Files. You can follow me there if you would like as well. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, and be sure to tune in the next one. Later.